Good evening, everybody. It's still light enough out that I could make a video. It's clear enough. Someone asked me on the previous video, what would I expect, not to be triggered when Kamala Harris says the bankers, and not that I'm a banker, but it seems like, if any Republican would say the bankers, the media would right away say, well, that's a dog whistle, that's talking about the Jews. And the irony here is that the Republican Party is the party of Lincoln, it's the party of civil rights, it's the party that freed the slaves. The Democrat Party is the party of Woodrow Wilson, of the KKK. It's the party that the Nazi Party found as their inspiration of how to enact racist laws. It's the inspiration, it's the grandfather of the Nazi Party. And it's as the Nazi Party is, it's currently a child of Marxism, which has been much worse than Nazism, or it really includes Nazism, it's just a different flavor of Marxism. And it's sickening to me that the Democratic Party can still get away with calling themselves the Democratic Party. Like, how is it, could you imagine in Germany if the Nazis would say, well, we're still calling ourselves Nazis, but we're not racist anymore, we're not anti-Semitic anymore, and actually the people who oppose us, they're the real racists. Can you imagine if, I don't know what the parties were called in South Africa, whatever the party was that did apartheid, if they were still allowed to exist and use the same name, and now all of a sudden say, oh no, but they're the real racists. They couldn't get away with that. How is it that the party that rebelled against this union and made war, the bloodiest war in the history of the United States, and yet they can still keep the same name, and then they have the chutzpah to claim that the party that freed the slaves, the party that all the legislators who supported civil rights belonged to that party, and just they happened to get a president who was really a racist, and just, with his low expectations, felt that he could fool people and get more votes. It was all about politics and not about really helping people. And how much the Democratic Party has destroyed minority communities in America. And so just calling yourself a Democrat, identifying with the party of the KKK, identifying with the party of all those people who owned slaves. There was not one Republican ever who, at the time of being a Republican, ever owned a slave. The closest thing we could find was that President Grant, his wife inherited a slave, and technically he owned that slave as well. And that was back when he was still a Democrat. He only turned over later. And so it's not that nobody can blame bankers, this and that, although it's kind of weird blaming the bankers. What does that even mean? It certainly would sound to, if Donald Trump would say something about the bankers, everyone would, not everyone, not normal fair thinking Americans, but I'm saying the media that is run by these people would automatically say, oh, that's anti-Semitism, that's anti-Semitism. How does Kamala Harris get away with it? And so what triggers me especially, she's essentially an Uncle Tom. And any black person who votes Democrat is an Uncle Tom. How do you vote for the party that enslaved you? I mean, and has destroyed the families, destroyed so much of these communities, and really still enslaves them. I mean, the current ghettos of the inner cities that are run by Democrats are just the modern day plantations. And that's not me saying that. That's Barack Obama said that. In his autobiography, he wrote that the inner cities today are the modern day plantations. And they're all run by Democrats, just like the old plantations were. And so that's what's triggering. It's just the state of being a Democrat. It should be triggering to any American who cares about equal rights, who cares about freedom, who doesn't believe in collectivism. I mean, she brought up collectivism in her speech there. It's not, and to me, no. If Donald Trump would say something about the bankers, I would not think it's anti-Semitic. But when a member of the Democratic Party, the party of the KKK, the party that inspired the Nazis, says that, well, then it is. It's at least triggering for that, even if it's not necessarily 100% what's going on there. But it's certainly weird. Where does she bring that up there? So that's my answer. It's not, if certain people would say this, I wouldn't feel the same way. If someone who's known to be a friend of all Americans, not just our community, because it's not about Jews, it's about all Americans. But if someone like, a real statesman like Ted Cruz or Rand Paul or, would say something to bankers, I wouldn't think that's anti-Semitic. But when Kamala Harris or anyone that's part of the Democratic Party, the party of the KKK, the party that inspired the Nazis, the party that's today emulating Marxism that killed more than the Nazis, and really Nazism is National Socialism, it's a form of Marxism. So it's just another branch of the same tree. And Marxism it collectively has killed hundreds of millions of people in the 20th century. Whether it's in China, in Russia, Cambodia, Vietnam, North Korea, it's been the single most destructive force in the world. Leftism has been the most destructive force in the world. And a lot of it comes from Shabtai Tzvi, Yimach Shemo. Almost all of it can be traced back to Sabbateans and Frankists. But that's what's triggering. That any American could still call himself a Democrat after the history of how the Democrat Party has consistently disenfranchised minorities and so forth, and continues to do so, and pretends that their disenfranchisement of minorities is actually helping them when it's really hurting them more than anything. And how nefarious the Democrats are in that. That's what's triggering. And I don't get triggered very easily. It's not about me as a Jew, really, as much as it is me as an American. And caring about all Americans. I've said it before and I've said it again. My community, the ultra-Orthodox Jewish community, is the canary in the coal mine on the attacks against religious freedom, and we see what's going on. One of these left-wing people who are quote-unquote born Jewish, whatever the hell that means, I don't know what that means, self-hating Jew from the New York Times, which we used to call the New York Tameh, which means unclean, or the New York Slimes, is going and saying hashtag expose Christian schools, and is asking people to put down Christian schools, and like Ben Shapiro said the other day, you know, if God forbid the Democrats win in 2020, we are going to have a tax on religious freedom like never before. There's going to be a concerted effort to shut down churches, and they've been testing the waters with our synagogues. What went on in Bloomingburg, of how Democrats, Marxist Democrats, supporters of Bernie Sanders and the like, were seeing what they could do to try to shut down our synagogues. All the fights against Eruvin, against yeshivas, and all these things. The goal was not us. The goal was the Christians. We're an easy target because we dress funny and we have beards and funny haircuts. But the real goal of these people is to shut down the churches, shut down the Christian schools, and so the attacks against our yeshivas and our synagogues and our mikvahs and our Eruvin and everything, all of that is with a goal of eventually attacking the churches, except those like the synagogues that kowtow to the Marxist left-wing ideology with their sacraments of abortion and redefinition of marriage, their sacraments of enslaving people to welfare, where you get to a point where you have to, if you make $50,000 a year, if you make $20,000 a year, you're making more than if you make $50,000 a year, and you got to pretty much make like $90,000 or $100,000 a year just to make up what you lost by making $50,000 a year. And that doesn't make any sense, but that's the system that the Democrats have invented. Why? To keep themselves in power, because that's all they care about. They don't care about the people. They care about themselves. It's a selfish power grab, and that's why Donald Trump was correct when he said, when he was inaugurated, he said this wasn't just passing the baton from one administration to another. This was a return of the power to the people that we're finally getting back after so many years of totalitarianism under both Republicans and Democrats, but more under Democrats. And that's what is triggering to me. That's what's triggering to me, is to say that we could lose this so easily after we finally scratch together and beat back these totalitarians that have taken away so many of our freedoms and been trying to take away religious freedom and so forth. And how evil the Democrats have been. And like I said, their sacrament of abortion, if you study the history of it, it all goes down to eugenics. It's rooted in the same roots as Nazism. It's lynching babies in the womb. It's pure racism. And that's been the modus operandi of the Democratic Party, really ever since Andrew Jackson, when he broke away from the Democratic Republicans, from the party of Jefferson, and Jefferson himself was scared to death of that guy, and how much damage he did, and how much evil he did. What he did to the Native Americans. And that's the Democrat Party. Not to say there wasn't some positive stuff about Andrew Jackson. There was some positive stuff about him. But this type of populism, which they so often, have accused Donald Trump of being a populist, nationalist, this, that, when that's not who he has, that's not how he's been governing. I was scared of Donald Trump because I thought he was too close to the Clintons, and he had too much in common, and he was really a Democrat, and I thought the whole thing was like the producers, how they made the play that was designed to flop just to make money doing that. And I thought that was, he was just trying to throw the election to his friend Hillary, and yet somehow he won, and it's a miracle. And it's so frightening to think that we could go back to the horrors that we had under the Obama administration. I mean, I know my situation. I came out of college with a good job, making $50,000 a year. George Bush was our president. And it wasn't that far into the Obama administration that I was making all of a sudden $12,000 a year, and scratching to find 3 or 4 part-time jobs just to make it because of how Obama destroyed this country. And now finally to be back on my feet, to be making more money than I ever had before, and to see that possibly be going all down the drain because of these idiots, the Democrats and the idiots who voted for them. I mean, it upsets me so much what happened in my congressional district. Why didn't we get a recount? It was really close, and yet we didn't get a recount. And that this misogynistic rapper who rapped about killing cops could be my congressman just because they gerrymandered Kingston and Poughkeepsie into my electoral district, when I live in a rural area. Those cities belong in the Albany district. They don't belong in my district. My voice has been silenced, essentially. We had such a fine person with John Faso. He was a real statesman. And instead we get this garbage. Someone married to a mamzeris. He has 2 little mamzerim growing up in his house. Halachic mamzerim. Megalgalim choiv al yedei chayev. And she's proud of it. She had to go make a PBS documentary about how she's a mamzeris. Idiot. And this is all because of the public schools, which, Kamala Harris, she was defending the public schools. The public schools are garbage. Public schools should be abolished. All this talk that people say, the Catholic Church abusing kids. You know what goes on in the public schools? And then those people, they go and sit, and they still get paid while their case is being investigated for 5 years. And we as taxpayers have to pay for that. And you're complaining about the Catholic Church when most likely a lot of those stories are probably just people who are just anti-religious, who are just making up stories, because that happens in our community all the time. Some kid is mad at their parents, they make up some disgusting, evil story, and they're Adam Zoimimim. I mean, I saw it with people who I know. One got 30 years, one got 105 years, and everybody knows they're innocent. They would never do anything that disgusting. And I'm sure it's the same. I'm not saying there's no abuse in the Catholic Church, but I think it's probably widely exaggerated. And the abuse probably is coming from, there has been infiltration in every religious community by leftists. I mean, there was a story that Bishop Fulton Sheen told that he had a woman who he had converted to Catholicism, who was sent, and she testified in front of Congress that she was sent by the Soviet Union to infiltrate the church and fill it with perverts, to try to destroy the church from the inside. Now, I'm not saying it's filled like that, but the cases like that, this was by design, the infiltration by the Soviet Union, and these are the same people who are ironically calling themselves Democrats and democratic socialists and this and that. It's no difference. It's all the same. And these same people would bring death and destruction to this great land, God forbid, like they have to China and to Russia and to Cuba and to North Korea and to Vietnam and to Cambodia and to Israel. And we don't need it. And we don't want it. And that's what's triggering these Marxists, these leftists. That's what's triggering. I don't want America to turn into communist China. I want America to be America. And America was great and is great and will be great. Despite all of this that these leftists have been trying to do to destroy this great country. Because God is on our side. It's not about manifest destiny. It's about this great idea of America was inspired by God. I mean, there are stories about our founding fathers having encounters with angels. And how the great seal was designed and so forth, was revealed. There are legends about angels revealing these things. And whether these are true stories historically or not, the power of myth and legend in the Jungian sense is very powerful and important. And I truly believe that this country was inspired by God, and like the Arizal explains, when the Talmud says that the sage is greater than the prophet, it's just plain common sense that this country was founded on is in a way greater than revealed prophecy, and it's by divine providence, all just the same. And that's what Washington constantly, probably the biggest aspect of George Washington's theology was providence. He constantly invoked providence in his writings and his speeches, and the due diligence that every American has to have gratitude for the great providence of this country. And to see people try to destroy us, they won't succeed. But the fact that they're even trying is sickening and triggering. Finally getting this country back. It's not about race. It's not about bigotry. They're the real bigots. The Democrats are the bigots. The Democrats are the racists. They have a history of racism, and they have a current status of racism. They're the same people they've always been. They've changed their tactics, but their goals have remained the same. And we have to recognize that, and it doesn't matter if a Democrat politician happens to have dark skin, happens to have African ancestry. They're sellouts nonetheless. Ancestry doesn't mean anything. Our history proves that. Jewish history proves that. Look at how corrupt the priesthood was during the Second Temple. And how the rabbis of the Second Temple, many of them were converts. Rabbi Akiva, or the children of converts, Rabbi Akiva and Shmai Naftalian and Rabbi Meir, the greatest Tanoim and Amoraim, were converts, were Balei Tshuva, Rish Lakish. And yet these high priests, who came from such great lineage, and Shmai Naftalian said to them, when an arrogant high priest said, "Oh, peace be unto ye, children of Gentiles," they said, "Better we, the children of Gentiles, should be peace upon us. Then you, but we act like Aaron. Then you, a son of Aaron, who doesn't act like Aaron." What does it matter your ancestry? What does it matter your lineage, your race? None of that stuff matters, unless you're holding up a heritage that's doing something positive for you and for the world. But if it's just for nothing, who cares? What matters is what you do. What matters is how you live. What matters is do you care about other people? Do you recognize other human beings as being made in the image of God, or do you just see them as numbers, as votes? And if you think if you patronize them, and you think you're going to get all the Hispanics to vote for you because you're supporting illegal immigration, when those people, they came to this country to escape those people who were trying to come here illegally, and they went through all the work to come here legally. Is it fair to come in illegally? There's a lot to think about. So that's what triggers me. I'm sorry, I meant to make this video 5 minutes, but I can't shut my mouth after this. Why does it trigger me? And the answer is, the simplest answer is to say the bankers, that's not triggering. But the double standard that the media has, that if any Republican would say that, automatically the media would attack them and say it's I mean, it's well known that Hillary Clinton was anti-Semitic. She has a long, long record of making anti-Semitic comments. Dick Morris said, when he was helping the Clintons with one of his gubernatorial campaigns, and he had succeeded, and then the next campaign he asked her for a little bit more money, and Hillary Clinton said, well, all you people care about is money. And yet she can get away with this. Her daughter's finishing Hitler's job. She didn't convert when she married a Jewish boy. And yet, here we have our great president and his beautiful family. And they're Ehrlich Yidden. They're pious Jews. His daughter and son-in-law. They might not be ultra-Orthodox. I don't care. They try their best to keep the Torah in a pious way. I hear that Ivanka Trump, when she goes to shul, she davens with a lot of kavanah. She's not just talking to her friends. It's not a social gathering. She's really praying. Voiler Eilicha. And the Chassidische, they daven in the Chabad shul. I'm not a big fan of Chabad, but they daven in the Chassidische shul. In Washington, D.C. It's a gewaltige Sache. So that's what I have to share. All right. Thank you for watching / listening. Please like, share, and subscribe. Comment. I enjoy. Please make comments, especially if you disagree. It's a beautiful thing. Let's have dialogue. Let's talk about this. Because in a certain sense, my other video was saying this. It was a little bit hyperbole, maybe even slightly satirical, but satirical in the sense of bringing out this truth of what the hell is going on here. How can she get away with this when a Republican, when any member of the party of Lincoln who would do that would be called an anti-Semite? I don't like the term anti-Semite, and I spoke about that. I prefer to say Judeophobe. And yet, she, a member of the party of Woodrow Wilson, who was a racist, who resurrected the KKK out of the ashes. She can get away with it. It's a double standard. All right, thank you for watching, listening. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment, all of this. Take care.